Surveys with a post-it note. Now, this might seem kind of weird, or why am I talking about this? Well, there's actually some scientific proof that this helps get responses for your surveys. So I was reading a book by Dr. Robert Cialdini. This guy here, he's written a number of books. Influence, the Power of Persuasion, 50 Ways to Getting Yes, and he's got a new book called Persuasion. So it's all human behavior, psychology, but leading people to get a desired result. So what he recommended, and I actually had the opportunity to interview him, and I'll try, after we cover this, I'll actually play part of his interview, because I think it was really good. But in here, in his book, he says that if they did an experiment where they were getting people to fill out surveys, and so if like customer surveys, and if they would just hand people the survey, X number of percent would complete them. If they had a cover letter with the survey, then that gave it a bump of a few more people would complete the survey. And he said, but what really blew it off the charts is if you were to take a post-it note and write a handwritten note on it, that would skyrocket the surveys, the responses. So, and here's all that you need to say. Dear Simpson family, I would appreciate your feedback. Thanks. And then you stick that on the outside of the survey, hand that to them, and he believes that they will feel more obligated to complete the survey than if you didn't do that, because you've taken the time to fill out write this little note. Plus, you've made it personal. You've written their name on there. All these tiny little things that, from a psychologist point of view, help that process. Help the person take the actions that you're wanting them to take. He also says that if you can, they did another survey where they would have people communicating by email, and if they communicated by email and included a picture of themselves, those communications were much more fruitful because of the rapport building aspect than having no picture at all. So that's how they prove that. So I'm just going to cue this up here. Okay, so here we go.
Welcome to Funeral Gurus Radio. I am your host, Robin Hempel from funeralfeatures.com. We're continuing our series of pre-conference interviews for the ICCFA annual convention that is going to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada from March 19th to the 22nd. Today's guest is Dr. Robert Cialdini, who is the author of Influence, Science and Practice, and also, Yes, 50 Scientific Proven Ways to Be Persuasive, plus conducts workshops through his company Influence at Work, located in Tempe, Arizona. Personally, I have to say that this is an honor and a pleasure to have the opportunity to chat with Dr. Cialdini. I've been a student of his for 5 years now, reading both his books, Influence and Yes. Plus, I have listened to every interview that I can find. So with that introduction, Dr. Cialdini, are you there?
I am, Robin.
Oh, great. Now, before we get into the interview, could you just provide a little bit of background about yourself and your company?
Well, certainly. Personally, I've been a behavioral scientist who's been interested in the persuasion process for all my career, how we can move people in our direction, not by changing what it is we're offering them, but by changing the way we present what we are offering them in an optimal fashion so that they're open and receptive to hearing about the good case we have to make for them. My company is Influence at Work, and it's dedicated to providing providing speaking and training services for those organizations who would like to be more influential in the way that they approach the business that they do.
Okay, and now with your book Influence, you talk about the 6 principles, and that's what part of your presentation is going to be at ICCFA in March in Vegas. So if I could maybe just have you just introduce those 6 principles of persuasion, and just keeping in mind that the members of the funeral industry were very cautious people, and we're dealing with client families that are in a very emotional state, and we wouldn't want to be accused of taking advantage of someone who's in that grieving process.
Good. I'm very pleased to hear about the ethical orientation that you want to take to this whole process. I think that's crucial for being sure that we have long-term relationships that we cultivate with people, and making them much more likely to provide testimonials and referrals and wanting to come back to us in the future.
Great. Well, if you could maybe introduce the 6 principles.
Yeah, I think there are 6 universal principles of influence, principles that are so basic that if we include one or another of them in a request or a proposal or a recommendation that we make, that significantly increases the likelihood of assent to that recommendation. Here they are. The first is the principle of reciprocation. It's the one that says people have been trained since childhood in every culture, by the way. So if we're dealing with somebody who wasn't born or raised in our particular culture, it still applies. It's the rule that says people want to give back the kind of treatment that they have received from you. So it's very important that we go first in offering something of value, of investing in our customers and our clients and our prospects by giving them something before we ask them to reciprocate by giving us their business or their testimonial, perhaps. The second is the principle of scarcity. People will try to seize the opportunities that you offer to them that are rare or dwindling in availability. This means we have to be sure that we tell them what things about us are rare, what things about us are unique or uncommon that they can't really get at any of our competitors. And often it's not any one thing, but it's a particular bundle of features or benefits that we offer that really can't be matched. The third is the principle of authority. People will be most persuaded by us when they see us as having knowledge and credibility on the issue. So one of the things we have to do before we ever try to influence people is be sure that they are properly informed about our background, our experience, our credentials in the arena. The fourth is the principle of commitment. People will feel a need to comply with our requests if the requests are consistent with what they have publicly committed themselves to in our presence. If they have gone on record, if they have stated their preferences, their priorities, and their values, and we've asked them to do so, then it becomes possible to offer them an array of services that are consistent with what they have already said that they want to prioritize. That's a very powerful lever for change. The next principle is the principle of liking. There'll be no surprise that people prefer to say yes to your request to the degree that they know and like you. So one of the things we can do if we do not know the individual, we can find similarities between us, for example, that genuinely exist, and raise those to the surface. That increases the rapport that people feel with us, makes them more likely to consider us as being someone like them, someone they know as a consequence, and they're more willing to trust their decision in our hands. And the final sixth universal principle is the principle of consensus. People will be likely to say yes to your request if you first give them evidence that people just like them have been saying yes to it. I saw an interesting study in Beijing, of all places, shows you the cross-cultural reach of this. Restaurant owners can significantly increase the likelihood that people will choose a particular item from the menu simply by saying, this is one of our most popular dishes. Truly, honestly, just pointing to the popularity of a particular option. And that causes people to reduce their uncertainty about what they should do by looking at what other people like them have done in the situation. They get off the fence and they make a choice.
Well, that's that's so true, and I'd love to dive deeper into each one of those, but just in the sake of time, and also too, I want people to be at your presentation and get the full 90 minutes of that. But before I let you go, what if you don't mind, I'd like to with your second book, Yes. You've outlined 50 scientific proven ways to be more persuasive. So I've got my top picks, and if you don't mind, can I just run 3 of them by you just to kind of get your specific thoughts as it relates to the funeral industry?
Good idea.
Okay, great. And now the folks are going to have to get your book, and so they can go through all 50, but here are just the top ones here. So now number 5 is the title of that chapter is, when does offering people more make them want less? And how this might apply to the funeral industry is, in our casket and urn selection rooms, there are anywhere from 24 to 36 caskets, and there could also be a couple dozen or more urns to choose from. So first of all, are we doing something wrong there? And as a follow-up question, do you have any thoughts on why some funeral homes achieve a better result or a higher casket sales when they use a catalog or a computer to take them through the selection process instead of showing the family the actual full-size caskets?
Yeah. Well, I think it has to do with something that we sometimes forget about human nature in general, but specifically about people who are overwhelmed at a particular time with emotion or a lot of other things, details having to be taken care of at that moment. And that is, if we give them so many options, they just feel overwhelmed, and they just don't know what to choose, and so they don't choose at all. They just may walk away and go into a different direction to one of our competitors who can narrow the choices that we give. If there are 24 to 36 caskets available, for example, it just may be too much. And so there's research, for example, that showed that Procter & Gamble, that manufactures the shampoo Head and Shoulders, when it changed the number of models or versions of Head and Shoulders shampoo products from 26 down to 15, it produced a 10% increase in sales. 26 was just too many for people to decide. They went to something else on the shelves. So one of the things we can do is reduce the number of choices we give, and sometimes we can do that with a catalog where we can chunk the options into categories that reduce the number of possibilities, so we can show people opportunities that have a particular feature or a particular price range or something of that sort very quickly, and reduce the number of options that people have to overwhelm them. Another thing I would suggest is to use that principle of social proof that we were talking about a little earlier, that if a lot of other people have been doing something, it reduces uncertainty. So one thing a funeral director could say to people in a showroom might be, well, for people in your circumstance, whatever that is, right? If it's a spouse versus children, whatever the circumstance is, we find that most of our customers in your circumstance choose this option or between these 2 or 3 options. They are most popular for people in your circumstance.
Okay. And obviously, something that you could back up, not that they would ever call you on that, but something that is truth. You're not just true. You're not pushing them to the high end. You're being
Absolutely. Just go with what is honestly the most popular for people in their circumstance or with their resources, and inform them into assent. We don't trick them. We don't deceive them. Mm-hmm. We educate them into yes.
Okay. Well, that's great. That is a great insight. Thank you for that. Now, going to number 10, which office item can make your influence stick? So we're talking about Post-it notes, and I'll let you explain how that works. But a lot of funeral homes and cemeteries use follow-up surveys that they give to families immediately after the service. So if a funeral director wanted to increase his or her overall number of returns and also receive a higher level of satisfaction to those surveys, would you suggest using this strategy that they personally take a Post-it note and make a handwritten note on it, and if so, what would be the best thing to write on it?
Yes. Actually, there's research on this question. One researcher sent out requests for surveys, and he used a standard approach in which there was a cover letter asking people to complete the survey by a certain time and return it. There was a second approach in which there was a handwritten message written on the cover letter asking the recipient to fill it out in a timely way. And a third one, instead of writing the message on the cover letter, it was written on a Post-it note. Right? Mm-hmm. And then he sent out those 3 different kinds of requests. What he found was kind of remarkable. The standard condition, where there's just a cover letter, produced a 36% response rate. If there was a handwritten note on the cover letter, it produced a 48% response rate. Mm-hmm. But most astoundingly, if there was a handwritten note on a Post-it, it produced a 75% response.
Wow.
And when the researcher inquired into why that was the case, the people who had received the Post-it note said they were giving back to the researcher who had gone out of his way to do something special for them, to go out and find a Post-it note and write it and so on. So it was the rule for reciprocation. People felt that they had been given something by the researcher, special attention to them with that note, and they were going to reciprocate by giving back to him.
Wow.
So that's what our directors could do. Put a Post-it note with a request and a little personalized note on it, mm-hmm. asking for their help.
Well, that's great, and I love that one because this doesn't need to even be from the company's perspective. This could be the individual who wants, the individual funeral director or cemeterian who wants to connect with that customer more, because I know that a lot of them receive either bonuses for getting surveys back and the more positive surveys and things like that. So this is something that one person can do. Just keep a Post-it note and a pen and write those out. So excellent. Okay, Dr. Cialdini, just one last one if we can do that. Now number 47, so we're getting close to the end of the 50, and the title of that short chapter is How Can Technology Impede Persuasive Progress? So with technology, and particularly email, funeral homes and cemeteries receive a lot of pricing inquiries by email, and as well as they do by the phone, but more so by email now. And would after reading that chapter, would adding a nice picture of yourself in your email signature, would this help you win clients over?
I believe it would, for the reason that we suggested in the title. Very often technology impedes the success of a persuasive approach because it dehumanizes it. It takes all the blood out of the experience. It's the least humanizing of all influence approaches and channels for influence is email. I mean, there's just nothing there that humanizes us. And so we can put that back by instead of responding with just a price list, include personalized information, include photos of yourself and your staff members, maybe even a little biographical information that humanizes you, gives you a chance to let those people feel familiar with you. And now we have the liking process going in our favor because we've differentiated ourselves from others by making ourselves seem more familiar, more personal, more human. And people in that particular time of their lives are aching for some human contact that they can feel good about and that they can trust.
Well, that's excellent, and that's something that, it doesn't cost any extra money. It's just takes just a little bit of extra time to add that in, and their competition won't know what they're doing. So that's
Right.
That's amazing. Okay, well, Dr. Cialdini, thank you so much for your time today. When in Las Vegas, I'm going to be in the front row at your presentation, and you know what? I believe that it's going to be one of the most, or if not the most, insightful presentations that we've ever heard, because we've never really heard a presentation about this, especially geared towards us. So, because we always think that we're special and we're in a unique circumstance. So I'm looking forward to it, and I recommend everyone that's going to the conference to be in attendance as well. So, Dr. Cialdini, any final thoughts?
Well, no, I think
Okay, there we go. I'll just wrap that off there. Hopefully you found that kind of insightful, coming from a professional outside of our industry that looking into it, but that there's actually some science behind these thoughts and how you could maybe apply them to your operations, both from an individual perspective, but also from the company perspective as well.